All right, guys, welcome back to Downrange, the podcast. I am your co-host, Chris Sajnog, here with Scott McEwen. This is episode 2. It's Monday, October 19th, and we are going to continue on with our last discussion about the civil war that we are currently going through in the United States, or the upcoming one. But as Scott says, I think we're in the middle of it. Scott?
Yeah, as I was thinking, Chris, since our last episode a couple days ago, what events have taken place, because it's pretty fast and furious right now in America. I mean, the level of suppression of media that we are seeing right now is astounding and frightening. And for example, in the last day, we know that the New York Post, which is one of the oldest newspapers in America, it's been in production in New York for literally, I think, since the 1800s, or at least early 1900s. So it's not some new player on the market, if you will. It's been there forever. That now the social media giant Twitter has said, look, we will let you back on Twitter. They've shut off their news feeds on Twitter and said, we will let you back on Twitter if you agree that the Joe Biden story, Hunter Biden story, to cut it and not run it anymore. Otherwise, we will punish you, which is essentially one news organization saying to another that we are going to now not only limit your ability to get onto our, if you will, platform, we're going to completely ban you from the platform until you agree with our position. There's a difference in my estimation. I think the courts, if I put my lawyer hat on, and I am a recovering lawyer, if the courts were to look at that, one would be a restriction and on a publishing place, i.e. you can restrict certain content if that content involves pornography, involves some type of a call to violence, things of this nature, which I think the normal society would agree we should have the right to limit that type of content. However, it's another thing to do that, and then it's a completely different thing to say on a political level that not only are we going to limit you, we're going to ban you. We're going to ban you from getting back on our site until you say this story, which appears to me to be very true, not conjecture whatsoever. That we're gonna take that story, and you do not have access to our site unless you basically take it down and say it was untrue. So they're attempting to force a result and a comment from them that they posted inaccurate information. I think that is a penalty, and I think as a penalty, I think it's even more dangerous under the Constitution. So that is a very, very bad turn of events, I believe. But the other thing these guys realize is, both Twitter and Facebook is, even though they're being called to Congress supposedly to testify, and they'll delay that, whatever else, they don't care. They look at this like they're all in. Even if they commit illegal acts at this stage, it's okay, because their purpose is to get rid of Trump. And Trump is the only thing that stands between them and their ability to run whatever they want, which is, to me, another very dangerous aspect.
Yeah, one thing, when we're talking about this, I think we need to stop calling it news. And if we are going to call it news, we need to realize it is state-run news now. I mean, besides Fox News, which, I think Fox News is a little one-sided as well, but it's the only way to find any balance in anything. But everything else, it's either not news, or we have to agree that it's state-run news.
Right. And as we saw with other totalitarian regimes in the past, for example, in the USSR and China currently, you can't run anything but you want to hear. And look, I've got a Trump hat on at the moment, and I realize that, and I back the guy. But I want to be very clear. The reason I back the guy is not because I think everything he does is absolutely correct or anything, of that nature. I believe we need to have a voice that is outside, if you will, the state-run media and beliefs that we have seen. And I believe that it's important for this nation to try and clean as much out of these organizations and the stuff that's going on right now as we can, because we are finding more and more and more that the quote swamp is much deeper, much wider, and much more intricate than we ever thought in the past. And I think that this exposure of these state-run media organizations, which are now completely backing one side or the other, is a very dangerous point in our history.
Yeah, I wasn't a Trump supporter until about a month ago. And not that I wasn't, I shouldn't say not a supporter. I've always liked a lot of things that he did. You know, I think he's doing a great job. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, or he's trying to get done exactly what he said he was going to do, despite all the media against him and basically everything going against him. But if you just take away his silly tweets and, you know, his kind of gruff manner, he's doing a great job.
I agree.
And, you know, more so now with what you're saying, everything that's going on, if the Democrats get back into office, this country is going to go downhill faster than it is now.
And one more thing I want to say on this too is another thing that made me also support Trump. Obviously, I wrote a book with Ryan Zinke, a former commander at SEAL Team 6, then congressman from Montana, called American Commander. And I really got to know Ryan really well. And I got to know what he was really all about and the fact that he was truly a patriot. And the guy, you know, had given the majority of his adult life to the SEALs and to Command at 6 and to, you know, basically naval special warfare. But then he went and became a congressman from Montana and also once again volunteered to do something, you know, and he was paid, but not paid a lot, frankly, given the fact that, you know, what he had to deal with. And then he took the post as Secretary of the Interior. And when Ryan took the post as Secretary of the Interior, he made a decision to basically make this country independent energy-wise. And Trump wanted to do it. Ryan and I put it in his book that Ryan thought in 4 years it could be done. He really believed that he could make the country or help make the country energy independent in 4 years. And in 3 years later, it was energy independent. And essentially Ryan did what he could to open up the federal lands to exploration and, frankly, exploitation of minerals and resources that our federal lands are supposed to be. You know, and in places like South Dakota, that 90% of the state is owned by the federal government. Places like Nevada, places like the Bakken Shale, you know, on the border of Montana, South Dakota, and North Dakota, all that stuff there. He basically opened up Pennsylvania, that shale that they had there, to fracking, and as a result, this nation has done what it could. And when I say attacked, I'm talking about 14 lawsuits, personal lawsuits. The Democrats know how to make lawsuits personal, so you can't get the federal government just to help you. You know, you got a guy that's making a salary of whatever, under $200,000 a year, and all the salary is going to pay lawyers to defend the lawsuits that the Democrats bring against him. And just horrific, outrageous claims, and they didn't care. And I really got to know the media very well after this because they would make claims, and I think the most outrageous that I saw was they showed a picture of a man with an elephant in Africa, and they depicted it and put at the bottom, Ryan Zinke elephant hunting in Africa, at the bottom of it. Not only had Ryan never been to Africa to elephant hunt, you know, like he'd never been elephant hunting in his life, and they just totally, it was a complete fake, and they ran it on all the big news media, et cetera, et cetera. And what happened is,
you're saying it wasn't fact checked?
No, fact checked. This was absolutely created lie. And so he comes back and he says, look, you know, I want to see that. And they got the original picture. It wasn't him. And he said, I want an apology. And, you know, and they refused. They refused to take the story down. And then Ryan, basically, his comment was, the only thing I've ever hunted in Africa is terrorists. And they refused to run that as well, you know, because when he was with SEAL Team 6, that was his job. You know, the bottom line is, you know, that just shows you they will run fake stories. They will let it run, and then they will let it go until when they can. And then once you find them to be untrue, they don't even put it back out to do it. And they have protections legally to do so, which is another big problem in our society.
Yeah, so I just want to make very clear a great point, and I think a lot of people don't realize how big of a deal that is to become energy independent. Because up until Ryan came along, we were dependent on the Middle East for, was it like 80% Like we went from 80% dependent on other countries for us to be able to run our country to zero. And that's huge. The other thing I want to kind of mix in here is you talked about how little, Ryan made when he was serving in the government. And all government officials aren't paid very much. Like the president gets, I think it's like $500,000 a year. Right. And let's talk about media suppression, fake news, and looping in this whole fact that politicians don't make too much money. And let's get into what Joe Biden has been making from the time he started off. He goes back, 7 years of doing nothing, but hurting our country. But he was getting paid a little bit of money. Then he became vice president. Let's talk about what he's making now. Yeah,
well, there's an old adage out there, and I certainly never made it, the statement, but I'm more worried about the politician that comes to the office with nothing and goes out a millionaire than the one that comes to the office as a billionaire and loses money. The bottom line is, these guys, unfortunately, we see a lot of very nefarious activity. And the thing that they're covering up right now, the thing that is absolutely being covered up, and it's desperate cover up because they know that it's true. And I believe, given every piece of information I've seen, that all the allegations or the majority of the allegations being made against Joe Biden with Hunter Biden are absolutely true. But we now know that his salary in the last 5 years, since he was, involved with these Hunter Biden deals in Ukraine, China, etc., has gone from the $1 million a year range to the tens of millions of dollars a year.
And this
range.
Is Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. This is Joe Biden. Now, we also have a series of emails, and this is where they're very, very concerned, is because the emails say big guy. Now, he was smart enough to realize, that probably there's a potential that this could get out. But the big guy, from what we're hearing right now in these emails, that's going to get a percentage of the take, 50% sometimes, of all these deals that Hunter Biden was doing was, in fact, Joe Biden. If that's true, and if that is even partially true, then we know now that all of these scams that would be set up by Hunter Biden as a result of his coattails of being the vice president's son, for example, Burisma, the Chinese bank deal, $1.5 billion. The Burisma deal, which was at least $80,000 to $185,000 a month, and other monies we're hearing about right now, lump sums of monies for different things, that all those deals, there was an actual cut being taken by Joe Biden, being sent back, if you will, a kickback by the son, who had no business, absolutely no business being involved in any one of those deals. None, other than the fact that he was the vice president's son. And the kickback from the Russians, because the Russians are very practical people, especially Russian billionaires. These guys are smart. They're vicious, but they're smart. You can't underestimate the Russian intellect, because if you do, you don't play chess very well. Anyway, but long story short, they knew that they were going to get their money's worth out of Hunter Biden, and they knew that, for example, when this whole Burisma deal, the oligarch that was running it was being investigated because he was stealing so much money from the Ukrainian people, that when they brought their investigation, Hunter Biden would be able to have enough influence with Joe Biden to get that shut down, or the United States would not give them a $1 billion, quote, loan, which is not a loan, as anybody knows in the international world. It's a gift. So $1 billion was on the line, and they had to fire the guy that was investigating the company that was stealing money from the Ukrainian people. And if they did not fire the guy, and he has it in a videotape, and I hope everybody out there has seen this videotape. We should post it up if they haven't at the end of this, if we possibly could. And that is to say, look, either you fire the guy before I leave the country, or the $1 billion loan is done. And they said, well, how can you do that? That's Obama can do that. And he says, I know Obama, I know I can get this done, whatever else. And it was all a situation where the investigation was of his son's corrupt company at the time. This is absolutely the end of American foreign policy, if, as far as I'm concerned, any credibility, if you allow that stuff to happen.
Yeah, and the interesting part about this, when we look at all of these things that are going on with the fake news and people going after Trump, and you can almost look at, and I'll just bring up a few points, and I bet if we were to go down the list and everything that Trump has been accused of, they're accusing him to specifically cover up that area in Biden and his administration, and looking at the taxes. They want to get Trump's taxes so bad, and he's put out taxes, and this thing about him only paying $750 in taxes. You know what? If he could be president and teach everybody how to do that, how great would that be? Like if I was Trump, I would say, yeah, I paid $750 in taxes. You guys wrote this crazy tax code. I know how to use it.
Right.
And I can teach you guys too. But, the taxes they're talking about obviously are like maybe his personal income tax thing. But we both run businesses. You write everything off. But aside from that, he pays millions and millions and millions of dollars in taxes. But when they're only pointing that out, so we're not looking at Joe and his taxes. The same thing with racism. And keep trying to get Trump, to repeatedly say, I'm not racist. I denounce white supremacy, which he's done hundreds and hundreds of times. But they say it just to get in the mind of people watching. Oh, we need to ask him. We need to ask him. But like during that last debate, I wish when they asked him there, go, well, why don't you ask Joe here? Who, Joe gave the eulogy for Senator Byrd, who was a recruiter for the KKK, and talked about, he's like best friends with them.
Oh, yeah.
And there's videotapes out there. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a YouTube channel called The Conservative Twins. It's the Hodge Twins.
Oh, yeah.
I got one of their T-shirts on right now, Defund the Media. But they have a great montage that they put together with all these statements, like on video or audio, of Joe making blatant racist comments for like years and years and years. So it's not just that the stuff is out there; they know it's out there, and they're trying to cover that up by pointing the finger at the president. And one just last thing I want to say, if you're listening and you can hear this. That's a pretty good song right there. Yeah. But we are my studio office is above a CrossFit box, and they apparently have a workout going on right now, which they like to do every time I hit record.
Well, unless we forget, going back to the subject of the Civil War. Okay, this administration started out with a complete attempt to bring an investigation allegedly on Russian collusion. You talk about this doublespeak and the fact that what they did is brought back against Trump. That entire investigation, in my opinion, was exactly that. We know for a fact that investigation and those illegal FISA warrants were all based upon a dossier done by a scumbag in England, ex-MI6, let's just say individual, that by the name of Richard Steele. The Steele dossier was a complete fake, and it was done and paid for by the Democratic Party. We know that for a fact. That's established news at this juncture. That was the entire basis for a series of FISA warrants on the president himself, which people have forgotten this, Chris. And the bottom line is, this is not just current history. Nobody has had to pay back for this, and this was all the Clintons trying to get as much crap as they could out there. Then it didn't work, so they had to try and dethrone the president, i.e. do a de facto coup d'etat. Now, if you're going to start a civil war, one of the good ways you do it is do a coup d'etat. And that was an attempted coup d'etat on the president of the United States. Nothing more, nothing less. It was absolutely their attempt to depose a sitting leader of a country, get him out of office on the basis of false information. And even at the end of the day, they had to admit the fact because there was absolutely zero. Nothing that they could show for collusion between him and the foreign power. But where was the collusion between Russia and internally? All the stuff that the Clinton camp did to try and create this dossier, get this paid for crap, all the other stuff, all the Russian collusion was actually theirs, and they covered it all up. And now, what recompense, what payback has there been for this attempted Mueller report coup d'etat? And then ultimately they tried to bring a impeachment proceeding. again, try to get rid of the president of the United States. And this is just, ladies and gentlemen, we aren't talking about 20 years ago. We're talking about 36 months ago. Okay, so we're talking about leading up to this election. They tried to destabilize our government, which was effective in I believe, destabilizing the president up to the point of the coronavirus, which is another argument one can make that it did affect national security. But, notwithstanding the fact that all these things were done, we now know they're the ones that did it, and it was a complete cover-up for their actions, and the press ran with that ball. It was a complete charade, and somebody needs to pay for that. Nobody has done so far except for one lawyer that was caught changing emails, and they busted that punk. But the rest of them, that were involved in this, all the people, all the bad guys, going all the way up to what I believe to be the then CIA director, FBI director, things of this nature that were behind that crap, nobody has had to pay. That was part of the Civil War. That was part of what they did to try and overthrow the government to make their people back in power. And so let's look at all these events as a whole, and it becomes even more frightening when you see the press is covering up everything that these guys are doing. But the United States has just gone through an upheaval that could well have gone kinetic again, because I think that whole thing was very, very unfair. I think it was completely a travesty. And had it been successful, I would not have accepted it. I would not have accepted it personally as being what the government of the United, or what these people should have been able to get away with. And so we're still in the middle of that. If you will, there has been no payback. There has been no legal recompense to the Clintons and the rest of these people that basically tried to deceive the American public.
So with what's going on, getting back to, this Civil War thing that, are we in a pre-Civil War? I think we're in agreement. Yes. Can it be stopped? Yes. But is it possible that all this stuff that's going on in these democratic cities, all the rioting, like we can't call it protesting, is it possible that those rioters are being paid to, are they being told to create anarchy just, to, I don't know, to cover something up, to what is the point in that?
Well, I think there are, if you will, people within those groups that are being paid. And, I had an interesting observation because I was talking to a young person, when I say young person, in their 20s, and happened to be a bartender, and she was liberal. And, and I was saying to her, she said she went to one of these protests, and she said everything was fine. And then these people that were not a part of the group come in and start breaking windows and essentially doing all these radical things, starting fires, things of this nature. And the people that were actually trying, I guess, to give their word, which once again, you got the right to protest in this country. Yep. You really do. And I think that's an important right to assemble and to peaceably, give your point of mind to the government, in any government, not just this government. But that being said, that there would be these agitators that would be in there, that would be mixed in with the crowd. Now, are there people being paid by Soros and others and Soros-related government entities? There's an overwhelming amount of evidence that, yes, there are groups being paid. And how does that payment work? And I think that one of the ways that I think people could observe this, and this is not something I'm making up whatsoever, but within this group of people that are out there, quote, protesting, and the agitation, if you will, the potentially paid people within it, they're bringing bricks. Sometimes there's bricks being delivered to the area, like entire, pallets of bricks with accelerants. Cache set up with accelerants, i.e. bomb-making material, fire-making material, Molotov cocktails, things of that nature. We've seen some weapons as well, which has resulted in, some counter weapon use as well. But the bottom line is, we see all these things happening, and it has to be coming from somewhere. And I believe that some of these Soros-paid groups that are out there, there's a lot of evidence that it's out there. I don't know why the FBI has not made any busts. Once again, I'm very disappointed with what's going on with federal law enforcement, because I think this is cross-state activity. And, you see these things going on. Another one in Portland. I saw a guy busted the other day that had a van that had some, Black Lives Matter, quote, protest material on the side of it. But that van had been observed in another state at a riot that was going on. I believe it was in Denver or in Seattle or both. And so these guys travel back and forth between these different zones and these different quote protest zones. They're funded to get, the materials that they can for a cache to set up for an attack. And then once these protests start, they basically violently turn into a looting, rioting, burning situation where you're basically just trying to create havoc and chaos. And the communist governments of the world have always realized that havoc and chaos is what brings them to power.
Yeah, so it's interesting to think all this money that has been given to the Black Lives Matter organization, and millions and millions and millions of dollars, all the top tech companies, the NFL, the NBA, they're all fully supporting it. And you got to ask, where is that money going? Where did it all go? Are Black lives getting better because of those donations, because of this movement? And I don't think so. I mean, obviously I'm not Black, so I couldn't tell you, but from hearing from other Black voices online, conservative Black voices, it's not the case at all. It's making it worse.
Yeah, and the groups that are running those organizations, the people that are running those organizations, I'm not going to tell you what their message is. I just ask you to look up what the people that are running those organizations' message is, because it's straight communist, straight socialist, and they're not even abashed about it. They don't mince words. They come right out and say it. That's what they're about. That's what their organization is about. And a lot of that money, from what I saw from different links and stuff like that, was going directly to the Democratic Party. And for donations to the Democratic Party. And so, I mean, essentially they were funding a lot of activity, and you haven't seen the Democratic Party say a single word against Antifa, against BLM, against any of these organizations that have caused this chaos, this rioting, et cetera. And they will not. Trust me, they will not. They'll say, they quote, denounce violence. Well, if you denounce violence, and you better denounce the people that are creating the violence. And for people like Joe Biden to say that Antifa is an idea but not a group is like saying the Nazis was an idea but not a group. It's every bit the same. These groups are creating havoc. They're looting. They're burning. Our cities are unstable in many of these democratic towns where they let them operate. And essentially, it is direct in line with the Communist Manifesto and the things that the communist people were told to do to agitate, that have created these communist jurisdictions in other parts of the world, which ultimately fail.
Yeah, one interesting thing that people need to take into account is the start of this whole Black Lives Matter movement is based off a complete and utter lie. It's based off of supposedly that law enforcement is out to get, they're out hunting Black Americans. They wake up in the morning and they go, hopefully I can gun somebody down today. And it's just not the case. And people need to just look at the numbers. And it's very clear to see, because it started because of officer-involved shootings, right? Officer-involved shootings of Black Americans. And they're saying they're disproportionately shot compared to, white people or anybody else. And it's not the case. Whites are shot twice as much as Blacks are shot by law enforcement. And then people will say, yeah, but Blacks are only 6% of the population, but they commit way more crime, especially violent crime, than whites. And if you look at officer-involved, say, arrests, it's exactly even with Blacks and whites and how often they are interacting with law enforcement. And if we're talking about officer-involved shootings, those are the only people that we can talk about. That's the only group, because it doesn't matter, somebody sitting on a farm in Montana, they're out of the equation. So if you're looking at officer involvement, whites are shot twice as often, twice as much as Blacks. So it's just crazy. You have to look at the numbers. You can't just look at, we're only 6% of the population. Yeah, but you're doing 50% of the crime, compared to that. And the other thing that's interesting too, in talking about being suppressed and whatnot, if we look at like the Japanese or the Asian Americans in this country, they were put in internment camps, and they had everything taken away from them.
Within a generation. This is not ancient history. There's still people alive that were involved in that.
Yeah. So they had nothing. They had less rights, but now they make more money. They're the highest income group by race or ethnicity in the U.S. So why is that? If they can do it, why can't everyone do it?
And the thing that scares me too is what you just said is the truth, and what I just said is the truth, and we'll both be attacked for saying it. Because, guys in the military that have fought for this country, and I see this about, I got several buddies of mine that are black, that are military guys. They're willing to say it. And cops that are black, they're willing to say what you just said. And they can say it with a certain degree of freedom, if you will, but the press would attack you and me for just saying these exact same things, merely because of the fact that we're from a Caucasian background. Right. The bottom line is, but, does that make, that in and of itself is what these groups are trying to say makes us bad. And that's where America does not need to go. Once again, the forces of the left have always, in a civil war scenario, before they try and take over, they've always tried to pit the races and the economic, if you will, zones of the people. This is a flat dogma of communism against each other, and that's exactly what these groups have tried to do: is pit these relationships against each other. And I personally believe that before we had certain situations that we've seen recently, America was doing better than I ever seen in my 58 years. And I think that the whole, if you will, gap between what should have been or what could have been between the different colors of people, and I'm not talking about just black and white. I'm talking about Hispanic individuals, whatever else, Asians, everything else. That America was doing extremely well. Unfortunately, we have gone backwards because what I believe to be a growing socialism and communism movement that have tried to pit the economic groups and the races against each other. And unfortunately, the media has bought and sold that thing, and once again fomented action towards this, quote, civil war attitude that we're seeing right now, that we're all against each other. And, the military, going back to the point that I was making in a long way, sorry, folks, the military understands that's not the way it is. That's not the way it is, because you guys have had to fight, bleed, protect each other together. And that you realize the man next to you, you don't care what color he is. It's whether he will get your back when you need to have your back covered. And that's exactly the difference. Is the military doesn't make any demarcation based upon race. They make demarcation based upon what you're actually willing to do in defense of the country. And I think that's true with the LEOs and the police departments as well, is that they grade the people that do it based upon their ability to do the job and get the job done. And, we need to get back there. We need to get back there as soon as we can to avoid the next stage of this thing.
Yeah, I've always thought it was funny whenever I'd be back from a deployment or whatever, spent 20 years in the military, and coming back and hearing these people complaining about stuff overseas and what's going on with whether it's the Palestinians or the Israelis, and I'm like, have you ever been there?
Yeah.
They're like, no, never left the country. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I was just stationed in Israel, working in Israel. So I think I probably have a little better voice on that. And it's the same thing with law enforcement. People talking about what it's like, or, what law enforcement should be doing in their jobs. I mean, old Joe just said the other day at his town hall, I just saw, he's told the country that, hey, law enforcement needs to learn to shoot people in the leg.
I saw that.
Really, Joe?
Yeah. Really.
Oh, there's a guy coming at me. He's going to try to kill me. Aim for the leg.
Yeah.
Let's just piss him off more.
Yeah.
Just crazy. And then he also said he has a shotgun, and he said you can just shoot up in the air too.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, okay, yeah, so you just shoot your neighbor.
20 gauge double barrel, I think.
Yeah. Just shoot your neighbor up above you, not the guy that's trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, Joe.
Yeah.
So let's finish this up with, obviously there's a lot of problems we've got going on right now in this country. What can we do? What can people watching and listening to us right now, if you think there's any grain of truth in what we've just been talking about, what can we do? What should people be doing right now to change this? Because I don't think anybody in their right mind thinks we're on the right path. So is there a way to turn it?
Well, the most immediate thing, and it may sound like a redundant, if you will, statement, but the most immediate thing you can do is get out there and vote. You better vote. You better get your butt out there in line and get out there and get it done. Because if you don't, I fear that apathy will take us to the end. Because I really believe that this country is not stupid. And there used to be, I had an old boss, and he would say to me with juries, when we go into jury trials, he'd say, Scott, never underestimate the jury. Never underestimate the jury and the ability of the jury to see through to the truth. And so if you bring them lies, they will understand you're bringing them lies. And if you try and lie once in front of that jury, they will hold it against you, no matter what your client did. And we represented some big clients, and sometimes things didn't go the way they should have in that train wreck or whatever else we were defending. The bottom line is, but if you lie to them, then by God, these people are not stupid. I hope the American people understand that and get out there and vote. Because if they do, I think that, for example, Trump has made mistakes and the Republicans have made mistakes or whatever, and Trump has made mistakes. But I do not believe that he has made mistakes for his personal benefit. I believe the mistakes he made were for the U.S. And leaders are always going to make mistakes. But as long as they make it for the men and women they're representing, then by God, I'll forgive them. That's my attitude. My own personal attitude is, it's a difficult job and you're always going to have something. But if you make that mistake for the guys out there you're supposed to represent, then so be it. I also believe on the flip side that there is so much corruption going on right now with the Democratic Party and this liberal media that's out there that we are really at an abyss. And so the only way we can turn this is to vote and get as many Republican senators, congressmen, and I hope the president back into office, and really kind of turn the tide here, because I believe that's the only hope that America has right now for this generation and for my kids. My kids. We've had a great life, Chris. You've had a great life. I've had a great life. I'm not upset over my life. I've seen things and done things that most people would be amazed at, and I'm happy with that, with my life. But we must help the next generation. We got to do that. And the second thing is this: do not let them take you down or be intimidated from posting on social media and saying the things you want to say. Because I get taken down, you get taken down all the time, Chris. But the bottom line is I'm coming right back. I'm coming right back every single time. And the people that follow my stuff on social media, Facebook, scottmcewen.com, whatever, read my books, they realize I will not back down. And I'm hoping the people out there don't either.
Yeah, I think that voting is a super important. And, I voted already here in California. And the thing I want to bring up is, even if you're in California and you're a conservative, still vote. It needs to be heard. And I think a reason that we've had these kind of disparity, it happened once with the disparity between the popular vote and the electoral vote, is because of places like California, whereas the entire conservative population of California, basically, I don't think a lot of them voted, because it's like, why? There's no way we're going to win. It's a foregone conclusion. So let's change that. So no matter where you are, and vote. Whether you think your vote counts or not, it is going to count. It is going to help. The other thing is, I just donated last night to Trump's campaign. So, every little bit helps. So just, keep fighting the good fight.
And don't let them back you down either. When people try and back you down and say, oh, this and that, and scream louder than you, whatever else, my response is, you're wrong. And you know what? I can prove you wrong if you want to listen. If they want to keep screaming like liberals do, then let them scream, but don't back down. Don't back down. There's no reason to back down. And, and we got to stand as Americans together for this country now, or there could potentially be nothing left to stand for in 10 years.
Yeah, and I'd say don't go down to their level as well. Like you said, let them scream, let them act hysterical. One of the greatest guys I see on this is Charlie Kirk. He is just, he knows his facts, and he has these crazy socialist people just screaming at him in his face, and he just stands there and waits, and then he just brings out a fact, and it's like, well, okay, forget all that, but he just keeps going. So I'd say, just keep doing that same thing.
Sounds good.
All right, so that is it for episode number 2 of Downrange, and I think Scott's going out of town for a little bit, but when he gets back, stand by for episode number 3. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Remember, share this, comment, get some great comments on this, so make sure you share it, comment, get the word out there, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.